All right, so the next topic we want to talk about are piecewise functions. So piecewise functions are those that are defined by more than one expression over various intervals, intervals of x values. So the most basic piecewise function that you guys are probably familiar with is actually absolute value. So an absolute value function is actually the piecewise function, f of x equals x when x is greater than or equal to 0. So when we are strictly positive or strictly to the right of the y-axis when our x values are positive. And then it's defined by x, or f of x equals the opposite of x when x is less than 0, right? So when I have all of my negative x values here to the left of my y-axis. So when we're going to graph these, sometimes it's easiest to sketch the entire graph of a particular function and then to go back and delete the portions that you don't need. So what I have here is f of x equals the opposite of x plus 4 when x is less than -2, x squared when x is between -2 and 2, and 2x minus 3 when x is greater than or equal to 2. So I'm going to do this in 3 different colors. So here for the first color, we have -x plus 4. So I'm going to get a line that's going to have a y-intercept here, and it's going to look something about like this. Okay. Now, the only thing is, I really only need this when my x values are strictly less than -2. So my x values are out this way. Or I can highlight that on the actual axis here. Okay. So what I can do is I can go back then and erase everything that's greater than -2. Okay. Left myself a little room because it's strictly less than -2, so I want an open circle here. So I have a portion of the graph that looks something like this. My next interval is actually going to go between -2 and 2. My third interval, when I get to it, is going to be everything greater than or equal to +2. So let's go back and take a look at my middle interval. So my middle interval, -2 to 2, I'm going to have the function x squared. So I'm going to have something that looks like this. Okay. So what I can do then, again, is actually go back and take a look at the values that are outside of my range. All right, so anything that was less than -2 I can get rid of here, right? And anything greater than x equals 2 I can get rid of on the right. Now on the right hand side of this, we're going to have an open circle, right, because it's less than +2. So we have an open circle here. And on the left hand side at -2, I'm going to have a closed circle because it's less than or equal to -2. Or x value is greater than or equal to -2, pardon me. Okay. So for our last interval then, I'm going to have 2x minus 3. So I'm going to have a line that looks something like this. Okay. And again, I only want this when my x values are greater than +2, or greater than or equal to. So I'm going to have a filled in circle here, a closed circle. Following line. All right. Now the highlighting I did on the x-axis strictly for illustration for our purpose here, to show where each of these intervals are coming from. You don't actually have to do that. It's not part of the graph. The final graph should look like this. I did the highlighting simply to show you guys where things were coming from, and I used multiple colors so you can easier see the different intervals as you're doing this, especially as it's new. All right. There is another problem here. I want you guys to try this one. We can go over it and take a look at it and talk about it in class. But I want you guys to take a minute, try this piecewise function, and then we'll go from there. The last thing I want to talk about in the actual notes for this section is piecewise applications. Right? There are a lot of different scenarios where piecewise applications come into play, and anything where your rate changes based on usage. For example, like back when I was in high school, cell phones, you bought a plan, maybe 200 minutes or 400 minutes or however many minutes per month of talk time, but if you went over that, you had to pay a certain amount per minute. So for example, if you had a 400-minute plan, it might cost you a certain amount, but then any minutes over 400, now you started paying by the minute, and maybe it was 15 cents per minute over, right, up to 800 minutes. And then if you went over 800 minutes, then maybe it was 10 cents a minute once you exceeded 800 minutes a month. That would have been a piecewise defined function, right? The example I have here is an electric company. So an electric company is charging customers 0.0577 kilowatt hours or dollars per kilowatt hour for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours. They're charging 0.0532 per kilowatt hour for the next 4,000 kilowatt hours, and 0.0511 for anything over 5,000 kilowatt hours. So I want to write a piecewise defined function, C for the cost of X, for X number of kilowatt hours. Kilowatt hours in terms of electricity is comparable to saying the number of gallons of water you use on a water bill. Okay, so it's an amount of electricity. So we're going to have C of X, and that's going to be equal to, my first interval is going to be at the rate 0.0577 per kilowatt hour X, and this is when X is strictly less than or equal to 1,000. So less than or equal to 1,000. All right, my next 4,000 kilowatt hours, so picking up here at 1,000 for the next 4,000, it's going to go from 1,000 strictly less than X up through and including 5,000 kilowatt hours. So this is going to be charged at a rate of 0.0532 times X minus 1,000. Right? And I'm going to come back to why the X minus 1,000 here in a second. Essentially, the reason being is I've already paid for my first 1,000 at this rate here above. Okay? It's only my next 4,000 that's being billed at the 5,000 rate. So think about, or at the new rate. So think about it this way. If I use 2,500 kilowatt hours of electricity, the first 1,000 is billed at 0.0577. Only the part that exceeded the 1,000, thus the 2,500 minus the 1,000 I've already paid for, so the 1,500, is going to be charged at the 0.0532 rate. So what I'm trying to do here, if I'm in this next interval, right, I want to figure out how much I paid at this new rate, right? So the new rate times my actual usage minus the amount I already paid for at the other rate. Now, the only thing is, I still need to figure out how much did I pay from this previous amount at its max. So if I evaluate 0.0577 times 1,000, I'm going to get 57.70, okay, or 57.7 that I've already paid. For my next interval, right, my new rate, anything exceeding 5,000, so X greater than 5,000 kilowatt hours, is going to be billed at 0.0511 times X minus the first 5,000 that I would have already paid for in this previous interval at its maximum. So again, I need to find the starting point for this top interval, and I'm going to evaluate that at the maximum value here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually evaluate that. So we're going to have 0.0532 times, and 5,000 minus 1,000 is going to be 4,000, plus the 57.70 that I would have already paid for, and I'm going to get that I've already paid $270.50. This is my piecewise defined function. Again, a couple components that I've got here. Right? When I take a look at this, each interval, I'm subtracting off the amount I've already been billed for, right? The amount of usage from the previous line, but I'm figuring out the total usage that would have come from the max from the previous line, and I'm adding it in. All right. So when we take a look here, the last thing we're asked to find is how much is someone's bill going to be if they use 4,300 kilowatt hours of electricity. So first thing I want to do is figure out which of my three intervals here does 4,300 fall within. In this case, it's the middle interval, so I'm going to use the middle interval. So 0.0532 times 4,300 minus 1,000 plus 57.70. Well, we're going to get a cost for 4,300 kilowatt hours of electricity of $233.26. All right. We're going to do at least one more example of applications piecewise functions tomorrow in class. So if there's a part of this that you're really confused about or doesn't make a whole lot of sense, we're going to talk more about it tomorrow. And we're also going to do some more of these problems in your assignment tomorrow. All right. So if that seems like something where you're not sure where I pulled some of those values from or why I came up with those, you're going to have some time and an opportunity to ask questions tomorrow. All right. So give this a look, give it a try. There are a couple of problems that you are going to do for homework this evening as well. But give them a shot, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.